Welcome back, strangers. Today, we're doing a collaboration with Weird World, a channel that creates awesome countdown videos on all things weird. Be sure to check out his channel and his video on our topic. Together, we bring you the top 10 Insane Asylum Mysteries. Weird World will be covering numbers 10 through 6, and we'll be taking it from there. So come along as we investigate some of the greatest mysteries from the depths of insane asylums. Starting off our list is a mystery from the Foxborough State Hospital in Massachusetts. The facility was originally opened in 1893 to treat dysbomaniacs and inebriates, but started admitting patients that were diagnosed as insane in 1905. Foxborough Hospital had a dark history and was accused of various cases of patient mistreatment and abuse. Despite this, the hospital continued to operate and buried their dead in the two cemeteries located on the hospital grounds. The facility eventually closed in 1976, and the property was sold. Throughout the years that followed, stories arose of a lone unmarked grave hidden in the woods away from the cemetery. This was thought to be a myth, but upon investigation, a small pile of stones used as a grave marker was found next to an abandoned building on the grounds. The identity of the grave's inhabitants remains unknown, but is believed to have been from the victim of an incredibly infectious disease, and that they were buried away from the hospital to reduce chances of the disease spreading. In an attempt to honor the poor soul, an official funeral service was held for the grave in 2010, in hopes of letting them know they were not forgotten. Next, we have a heartbreaking story from the Fairview Developmental Center in California. Van Ingram was a man who was born with severe autism and was admitted to the Fairview Center at the age of 8. Van Ingram lived at the facility for 42 years, until 2007. One day, Van's brother Larry received a call saying that Van had had an accident. The hospital claimed that Van fell out of his bed, which in turn broke his neck and crushed his spine. Van was sent to a neurosurgeon, where it was discovered that the injuries he received could not have been an accident. Van's brother had noticed that Van had black eyes and bruises during previous visits, but had assumed they were incurred from normal accidents around the hospital. Van's brother began to investigate the hospital and found that Van was not alone. Over the years, hundreds of abuse claims had been filed against the hospital. However, none of the cases were investigated further. One major case was that of a 25-year-old quadriplegic who died from internal bleeding after consuming swabs that were over 4 inches long. The Ingram family pursued a legal case and was awarded $800,000 for the suffering poor Van experienced. Throughout history, one of the biggest mysteries has been that of the identity of Jack the Ripper. However, many were convinced that he was already admitted into the Broadmoor Criminal Lunatic Asylum. Thomas Hayne Cutbush was a patient that had been committed after stabbing a woman during a nightly stroll. The public has been convinced that he was the Ripper, to the point where the asylum actually released a series of 26 documents in an attempt to silence the claims. Thomas's insanity began to bloom in 1888, which coincided with the murders of the Ripper. Whether he was the Ripper or not, Thomas was insane. He was convinced that his doctor had been attempting to poison and kill him. After failed attempts to press charges, he believed that the government was also in on the murder attempts. After he was committed for the murder of the young woman, he was also reported to be very violent. This included an attempt to bite his mother's face off during one of her visits. Thomas's description also matched that of the Ripper, including his bright blue eyes and his famous limp. It was also noted that Thomas's uncle, who was a superintendent of the Scotland Yard, shot himself around the time of the Ripper's murders. Was Thomas really the Ripper, or just a severely demented individual? We may never know. Number 2 on our list is the mystery surrounding the Insane Asylum on Poveglia Island. Before the asylum was even constructed, the island was known for its horrible tragedies. Multiple wars have been fought on the island, and it was also used as a quarantine zone to contain victims of the plague. In 1922, the buildings on the island were converted into the island's insane asylum. During its years of operation, many people reported seeing apparitions and hearing disembodied voices. There was also a legend surrounding a doctor of the asylum that enjoyed performing lobotomies and other experiments on his patients. Not long after he began his horrible experiments, he he began to hear the voices himself. Some think that the voices were from his victims, which led him to fall to his death from the facility's bell tower. Some even say that his body was bricked up inside the walls of the asylum, where he remains today. In the 1950s, the Austin State Hospital, formerly known as the Texas State Lunatic Asylum, began collecting the brains of its deceased patients to determine if mental illness had a physical component. These brains were preserved in jars that were carefully labeled with the patient's name and diagnosis, with around 200 specimens canned and shelved over approximately 30 years. In 1986, storage space was becoming a problem. The hospital offered to give the brains to anyone who wanted to use them as a research tool. With major universities vying to get a hold of the brains, the collection was eventually transferred to the University of Texas in 1987. Among the brains was that of Charles Whitman, the infamous ex-Marine from our last video on strange medical conditions. He climbed a tower at the University of Texas in 1966 and started shooting. By the time he was shot dead by the police, Whitman had already killed 16 people and wounded 32 more. Earlier, he had killed his wife and mother. Whitman left a note requesting that someone look at his brain to find a reason for all the thoughts he had been having. Later, it was discovered that he had a brain tumor. In the mid-1990s, researchers took a look at the university's collection of brains, which had only been gathering dust until that time. When they searched for Whitman's brain, it was nowhere to be found. Along with about 100 other brains, it had disappeared. Various people at the university came up with different excuses to explain the missing brains. The possibilities included that the brains had been moved, thrown away, placed in storage elsewhere, or returned to the state asylum. The state, however, said they had never received the brains. According to a December 2014 update, between 40 and 60 of the brains were destroyed by the university because they had degraded to the point of being unusable for research. However, the university said that Whitman's brain was not among them, now claiming that his brain had never been received in the first place. That's our list. What story do you think was the creepiest? Let us know in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out Weird World's channel and let him know we sent you. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't. We appreciate all of your continued support, and as always, stay strange.